Good morning. I see everyone who made it here got through the cold, so I'm happy to see so many people here today. I'm Jeff Nobles. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm a member of the San Jacinto Social Justice Team. This is Social Justice Sunday, and once a month our team is responsible for the content that you're about to hear. Say that again? Who is San Jacinto? San Gabriel.
You said San Jacinto, Joe.
I lived in Houston for 35 years. Some people say San Jacinto, but in Houston we say San Jacinto. And part of me is still there, I think. And it would be 20 degrees warmer there if I was there this morning. So I'm glad I was able to warm us up with my misstatement. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
And we're here to prepare for the start of today's worship. Gene Olson is our guest musician. Thank you, Gene, for that beautiful piece. And before we begin, I have a few quick announcements. Check your Sunday handout, which you received today. Also your weekly messenger for information about what's going on. Today we are welcoming Dr. Paula Dawning as our guest speaker. She's sitting back here by Lou.
The plant.
You're not, that's a house plant. Thank you, Dr. Dawning, for coming here today. You came further than a lot of us did, and we appreciate you being here. We also appreciate the chance to hear you today. I think the big news I've heard this morning is that tomorrow's MLK Day parade has been postponed, and it'll be rescheduled for a future date. I don't know what that date is. Someone may, but once we know when it is, we'll get that information to you. Let's now begin. Let's think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words and his work as a call to action as you watch this video. Thank y'all.
I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. And I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
There is no freedom, the wise man said, let justice roll down, when the poor cry out for shelter and bread, let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let your love roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices rise up louder than the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together. together believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Step by step, one by one, let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophet, but the dream lives on. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream.
I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
And good morning, and welcome to San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Angie Nobles, and my pronouns are she and hers. And whether you're here in the sanctuary or watching at home, we're so glad that you're here. San Gabriel is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. There are over 1,000 UU congregations in the United States. All of us together are working for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. Sustaining each other here in the community is the first step down the long road of that important work. If this is your first time here, thank you for coming today and for getting out in this cold. We hope that you will stay for coffee and conversation after this service today. Members, please do look for those visitors tags and extend a hearty welcome. If you'd like to know more about us and learn about upcoming events, please fill out the visitor's card on the back of in the seat back pocket in front of you and sign up for our newsletter. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Let us greet this day in song. Our opening hymn is 115, God of Grace and God of Glory, verses 1, 2, and 4, in the gray hymnal, but the lyrics will also be projected. Please stand if you're able.
Bring his love to
as we light our chalice today, we create a sacred space together in the name of transforming love and justice. Our call to worship for today comes from the words of Frederick Douglass, the 19th century African-American abolitionist. It can be found in the Gray Hymnal, selection 579, titled "The Limits of Tyrants." And I think it'll be projected behind me too. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground.
They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters.
This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle.
Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will.
Find out what people will submit to, and you have found the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them.
The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress.
We invite Karina, any children and parents to come forward for the Wonder Box.
Good morning, all. All right, I've got a Wonder Box right here, and we use with our wondering minds, love to help each other learn and grow. So if you want to come forward and make a guess as to what might be in here, it's not making any noise. I'm shaking it really hard, so that's kind of a hint. Does anybody want to make a guess? You can shout it out. What might be in here? Feathers. A snowflake. Fabric. A letter? Are we ready to open it up? A flag? Does somebody want to help me open it up? I'll put it down. What does that make you think of? A crown. What could a crown be about? Yes, who wears a crown? I wear the crown, obviously. That's a song. A good friend of mine. A king, a queen, royalty, king. We're celebrating someone important tomorrow. And his last name was King. Now, he did not lead like a king. He didn't tell people what to do. He helped people understand what they needed to do. So let's see what our story today is going to tell us about him. All right? And you can stay up front and watch the story.
Be a King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream and you. Written by Carol Boston Weatherford, illustrated by James E. Ransom. Published by Bloomsbury. Here is a quote from Dr. King. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Also quoted here is Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. Service is the rent we pay for the privilege of living on this earth. You can be a king. Marvel at creation. Keep the faith of your ancestors. You can be a king. Know that bigotry hurts. Remember how you felt when treated unfairly. You can be a king. Admit that you've done wrong. Just say, I'm sorry, and mean it. You can be a king. Know that dividing walls should come down. You have glimpsed the other side. You can be a king. Break the chains of ignorance. Learn as much as you can. You can be a king. Stand for peace. Band together against bullies. You can be a king. Sing a song of freedom. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. You can be a king. Stamp out hatred. Put your foot down and walk tall. You can be a king. Answer your critics. Believe in your cause and state it plainly. You can be a king. Have a dream. Make yours great enough to grow into. You can be a king. Make the world take notice. Do your very best at whatever you do. You can be a king. Beat the drum for justice. March to your own conscience. You can be a king. Lift up the less fortunate. Be the king or queen of help. You can be a king. Set your sights on the mountaintop. Climb a little higher every day. The end.
You know, it struck me in that story that one of the first things mentioned in the book was keep the faith of your ancestors. And I imagine many of us in this room could not do that with good conscience. But what I read in that statement was that it is always good to remember where you've come from, the struggles your people may have had in the past, and how that history informs your actions in the here and now. The book certainly describes actions that align with our UU faith and values, principles of justice and equity, transformation, generosity among them. We'll talk more about that in our religious education time that we're going to have today in the little house. We're all going to go walk outside and walk over there. And Jean's going to play us some music so that we can go out there and do that. And we'll have some playtime and free time together. Are we ready to go? And we'll take this crown with us too. Are we ready to go? All right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lou Sneed, and my pronouns are he and him. And I just have a small part today when we're recognizing what we call Social Justice Sunday here today. And one of those is to remind us when we gather, we're seeking to become the beloved community. And all that's required in working at becoming a beloved community. And we believe that a center point of that effort is for us to share together those issues, those concerns, those joys that we bring with us here to this space most every Sunday as a way of listening to one another and learning from one another. So this is our opportunity here in this segment to share our joys and concerns today. I think many of us are mindful as the nation is in the grip of winter, the people who are particularly vulnerable at this time of the year. Michelle's been working with a coalition in Williamson County to try to provide shelter for the homeless. And we were driving into church today just being mindful about those who had to spend last night, and particularly this night and the next night, out in the elements. And that's a concern, and we are trying to figure out how people of faith in this community can provide the kind of shelter on those bitter cold nights. So we're mindful about those folks. We're mindful in the global sense about the amount of violence that seems to be exploding almost daily in the Middle East. And in the spirit of recognizing Dr. King's notion that violence never leads to anything positive or good, we are prayerful today about how peace might emerge, what it would take for the nations to bring about peace and all of that conflict that's around us. We're mindful of folks who are sick and are dealing with life-threatening issues. We're mindful of those who are celebrating the birth of new children in their lives. All of those things are a part of this moment for us, but this is the time for you to share what's on your heart and minds today. So if you have an occasion, I'm not sure where the microphone is this morning. Look what I found. Here, Jeff, I'm going to give this to you. It's on. So the man from San Jacinto will bring you the microphone if you have anything you want to share this morning. Just raise your hand.
Good morning. I'm Walt, the facility manager. I know everybody thinks it's cold outside, but let me tell you, I was raised in northern Wisconsin. This would be a warm winter day. We saw -40, and occasionally it would hit -50.
Yeah.
So don't complain, guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have all the faucets covered outside, and we got all the faucets dripping slightly with the hope that nothing freezes. My son is now with us for 2 weeks from Chicago, and we're having a good time together.
Thank you, Walt. We share in that opportunity to be with your son here in this warm part of Texas. Anyone else?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Bill, and thinking back about yesterday, we had a wonderful experience this weekend of sharing with loved ones and friends, and it was kind of telling that we were celebrating people at the far extremes and on the spectrum of life. On Friday, we were able to go down to Corpus Christi and to visit with our little great-granddaughter, Ozzy. And she's a love, and we had such a good time with her, and it's so wonderful, as you know, to see children come alive and grow and develop, and that was great. And then on the way back, we stopped down in Harwood, Texas, to see a friend, former pastor for Molly and me, John Stanley. John is about 65, 66, but he had a stroke recently. So he is struggling to overcome those issues and those problems. He and his wife, Heather, have decided they have to move, and so you know what all of that entails. But just that realization that we celebrate life all throughout our life, but at these extremes, it was particularly telling and moving to me.
Thank you, Bill. There's another in the back.
Hey, good morning. Everyone will notice how quiet it is.
Yeah.
No, so it's so nice to have our kids in the other room. I mean, it's nice to be with our children, obviously,
Yeah.
but without a ton of familial help here. It's nice to have just a few moments to, be here. So, thanks.
Thank you. We're glad you're here with your children. Anyone else? If not, this is our time to gather up our joys, our sorrows here together in a moment of silence, to hold them into our hearts as a way of kind of moving into the sacred space that we share. I'm going to offer a short prayer. I invite you, in whatever way that you like to meditate and reflect on what is ultimately of value to you in life, to join with me in this moment. Spirit of life, whom we know most fully and powerfully in the forms of love, we're grateful for this time that we can be together to practice being in love with one another, in love with your world, in gratitude, in thanksgiving, and in joy. We're also here, oh God, to share in those things that break our hearts, disturb the peace that we yearn for in your world, wanting desperately to find ways to bring about healing and reconciliation. I pray this day, oh God, you'd move among us in new ways to surprise us, to challenge us, and to redeem us. For I pray this in the name of the power of love that I affirm and we all embrace in various names, but I embrace in the name of Jesus. Amen. It's my joy this morning to introduce our guest speaker to you. I got to know Paula Dawning through working with Courageous Conversations, Georgetown, this racial reconciliation effort we started right on the hills when Michael Brown Jr. was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, and that's been a number of years ago. And Ron Swain has been our convener over these years. We have tried to address racial justice and equity issues here in Georgetown, and it's taken us across a whole lot of issues. We trying to deal with things like this Confederate monument that stands, on the courthouse square. Then we dealt with economic justice issues, trying to get living wages for low-wage workers, affordable housing, trying to address criminal justice issues, and here in the last 3 or 4 years, most urgently, trying to address the issues of strengthening public education in our school district here in Georgetown. And so all of those issues, kind of converge sometimes, we've discovered, around the issues of race and racial equity. And so we've invited today, as we recognize the spirit and impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on our nation, Dr. Paula Dawning to be our guest speaker today. Among other things, she will share with you about her own sense of what it means to be about racial justice and equity. But her journey, she comes with us with a business background and career. She's also served as an educator and a servant leader in community. She started out in early days in South Bend, and then she went to school at St. Mary's College in Indiana. She's one of 13 children. During her time at St. Mary's in Indiana, she went abroad to Algiers, France, and Mexico City. And after graduating from college, she earned a master's degree at Boston University and an MBA from the University of Michigan. And she spent the majority of her professional career working for AT&T for 23 years in the international division, and she retired as vice president working with mergers and acquisitions. If that wasn't enough, then she moved on to work as the superintendent of schools in Benton Harbor, Michigan, where she spent 5 years working in there, and then she came here to Central Texas. We don't know why. Maybe she will tell us why she would come to a place like this. But she's been working, been a leader with the Micro Project at First United Methodist here in Georgetown. And Michelle and I participated in their racial equity program that they've developed, and Paula was one of the creators for that racial equity program with First United Methodist. So we are delighted to have Paula Dawning here with us today. Paula, thank you. It's yours.
Thank you, Lou. You know, I used to have a folder with lots of pieces of paper, but now we have technology. And so I'm going to try and use it. I really appreciate the fact that you all were willing to bear the cold weather and come out, because to me this is no big deal. I called my sister who still lives in South Bend, and she said, Paula, we're supposed to have minus 35, and the snow is coming down like 40 going north. So I was like, that's why I moved to Texas. Because bad weather to them is 27 degrees. I said, and I can handle that. It's good to see each of you and to see my two friends who support me, Jerry and Alice, skipped church and came here. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and I share something in common, which is not obvious and you won't find it on the internet. We're both graduates of Boston University. While I was in attendance, I learned that we were going to school in the same building. He a few years before me, of course. The School of Theology was on the lower level of the building, and the School of Education was the top level. So even then, my faith was being formed on that foundation, and my schooling was as well. So I really appreciate the work that he did then, graduating in 1955, and me graduating in 1972, a few years later. I thank him for what he did for me personally, because Boston University named a scholarship, a fellowship after him. And the year that I was awarded the fellowship, there were only 3 of us that received that particular honor. I have several stories that I want to share with you that highlight the results of discrimination, unconscious bias, racial superiority, beliefs or white supremacy, a lack of love. It's mostly all based on a lack of love and a distortion of the truth. If we, in John it says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But so much has happened with us not even wanting to know our history, banning books that tell the truth, that it is problematic. I get excited on talking on this subject. I study it consistently, and so I have to watch my time, because Lou told me how much time I had, and I want to cover everything, which I may or may not be able to do, but I'm going to give it a try. So let us begin with Melody Hobson, who is the co-CEO of Ariel Investments. This is a $2.6 billion firm, and she's also the chairwoman of a place that many of you probably frequent, Starbucks. There are only two, well, she'll tell you, women who chair the thousands of corporations, and she happens to be one of them. I have a brief video introduction to one of her experiences. This is current. This is not something that used to be. So much of what we see and we think and we hear is what used to be. This is current. And so, Frank, if you will let that.
My friend Harold Ford calls me. He's running for U.S. Senate in Tennessee. And he says, Melody, I desperately need some national press. Do you have any ideas? So I had an idea. I called a friend who was in New York at one of the most successful media companies in the world. And she said, why don't we host an editorial board lunch for Harold? You come with him. Harold and I arrive in New York. We are in our best suits. We look like shiny new pennies. And we get to the receptionist and we say, we're here for the lunch. She motions for us to follow her. We walk through a series of corridors, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a stark room, at which point she looks at us and she says, where are your uniforms? Just as this happens, my friend rushes in. The blood drains from her face. There are literally no words, right? And I look at her and I say, now, don't you think we need more than one black person in the US Senate? Now, Harold and I, we still laugh about that story. And in many ways, the moment caught me off guard. But deep, deep down inside, I actually wasn't surprised.
So you can see there is no level that you can rise to where you are able to be exempt from discrimination. Here she is, chairman of a $2.6 billion firm, chairman of the board of one of the more popular firms in the country, and she's mistaken for kitchen help. It doesn't matter that she speaks well. It doesn't matter that she's dressed to the hilt. They still think that she's there to be the kitchen help. And that is not that unusual. And that's the unfortunate part. I say these things, and I'm going to highlight some things. They're not to insult anyone, but they are to portray a reality that is experienced by people who don't look like you. And when I think about what Melody had to say and her experience, She happens to have an honorary degree from St. Mary's, of which I am proud that we recognized her contribution and what she's doing. She also is married to George Lucas of Star Wars fame, so that she could buy and sell whatever she wanted and not be worried. And she doesn't get all freaked out about that experience, but it is very humbling to have that happen and have to go through it. And to have been a congressman thinking that you're somebody and you're still mistaken for kitchen help. So the fact that these indignities continue to occur no matter your level of achievement, it says to us we haven't made as much progress as we think we've made, and that we still have a long way to go. The one that really shocked me was when President Obama would talk about having been profiled and pulled over before he was president. When he was still a state senator or a senator, he got pulled over. And so, as I said, there's no limit to what can happen. My nephew, to make it real personal, my nephew was visiting me from Chicago just before this past Thanksgiving, and we went shopping at the Domain. My sister is a Domain fan. She thinks it's a wonderful place. We were in Dillard's. My nephew, who looks like a linebacker, he's, you don't miss him. And he looked around and he noticed that he was being followed by one of the sales associates. When you're that big, you can't hide. And no one's gonna, you're not gonna be missed. I was in another part of the store, so I didn't see this firsthand because I would have said something. But he was gonna just buy a shirt, and he did buy his shirt and went on, and then he told me, he said, Auntie, that lady was following me no matter where I went. She thought I was gonna try and steal something. I said, as big as you are? You would be seen before. Why do you think she noticed you? Because you're so big. Yet we continue to be confronted by our systems of structural and interpersonal racism. These are instances that I've given you of interpersonal racism because they're directed directly to those individuals. But those things ultimately come from a system of systemic racism. It was systemic racism that made the receptionists believe that if a black person was there, they were there to be servants, that they couldn't be there to be the guest of honor. So we find that when you increase your awareness, you are less likely to make those kinds of mistakes. Why could you not make a mistake and think that they were the guest of honor as opposed to the waiters and waitresses? My other nephew, remember I'm one of, we said 13, but my mother married a man who had 3, so it's really 16. There's 13 of them living. My other nephew, he's a big guy too. He's 6'3". I don't even reach his shoulder. He was driving the family Mercedes and later his little Fiat. He said he's been profiled and pulled over. But my nephew, because this is my brother's oldest son, and this is his son that I'm talking about, have the talk, and I'm sure with you all having these discussions monthly, you've heard about the talk. My nephew Paul said to his son Brandon, look, when you get pulled over, not if, when you get pulled over, here's what you do. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't make any sudden movements. Be very, very polite. Yes, sir, no, sir. Answer their questions. Don't do anything that would have me have to come down to the jail to find you, or worse, to identify your body. Because traffic stops very often can result in death. But how hurtful is that? My nephew is planning to be a physician. And I thought, now your dad and mom have put you through school, and you are saving money to go to medical school now, and you have to go through this. How hurtful is that? And you don't forget it. I will not forget that my nephew has had to go through that. And two of my other little nephews, they were riding bicycles, and police pulled them over. I was like, why are you pulling them over on a bicycle? They were looking for somebody, and they decided that they needed to query them. So your dignity, your respect is constantly challenged, and it's like the death of 1,000 paper cuts. These little things hurt. They add up. You try not to let them, but they do add up. When you never have to consider these things, you are enjoying the benefits of white privilege. You probably will not tell me about your nephews who have been pulled over and profiled. These are the trappings of privilege that are taken for granted that you fail to realize are not applied equally to all people. And so I want to just remind you of a few things. And as I share these examples in this category, think about the neighborhoods where you live. If you go jogging, is your life at risk? As it was for Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging in a suburban neighborhood of Houston, and a couple vigilantes decided that he must be the person who had been breaking into homes, and as of this day, his young life is over. They decided that they would take vengeance into their own hands. If someone just jumps on you for no apparent reason, I suspect that you would defend yourself. If you jump on me, I unfortunately don't quite get all Martin Luther King's nonviolence. You hit me, I'm gonna tell you, you shouldn't have done that. And if you hit me again, I'm gonna do my best to lay you out. And it's not that I'm a violent person. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have to do those things. But I'm not going to sit there and let you beat me or kill me. So, there are things that you never even have to consider, that if you look like me, not only had you not, don't you need to consider it, you better take it very seriously. We see what happened with George Floyd. If you are just a little off, now, he had done something that was, they said he had some counterfeit money. But should counterfeit money cost you your life? Should a traffic stop cost you your life? Should going back to your car to check on your children cost you your life? Every one of those instances, it costs that person their life. And some, we know their names. The list is long. And if I share some of those names here, some you'll recognize, some you won't. And I'm only going to show you just a few of the names from 2023. There was 33, I believe, if I counted them correctly, unarmed individuals who were shot and killed by the police. And on the wall behind me, you'll see their names, you see their ages, and you see what they allegedly did. I'll give you just a moment as you look at them. Well, some of those you can't see, so let me just pick one at random. April 11th in Houston, Texas, an officer approached Thompson with his gun drawn as Thompson sat in a stolen car. After Thompson, hold it still, reversed into the officer's vehicle. I lost my place there. And stepped out with his hand raised. The officer grabbed him before the two fought. After the two struggled on the ground for minutes, the officer drew his gun and fired. A friend of Thompson's gave the officer his taser. After a fall on the ground, was charged with interfering with public duties. So, whatever the infraction, however small or big, it was wrong for him. It was wrong for him to try and back into the police officer. When the police officer stopped him, he should have complied. So I don't support doing wrong, but should it have cost him his life? And if you read through this list, you would see that that's the case. And a little later on, I will talk about the number of times that a police officer has done this more than once. He's guilty of multiple infractions, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. And that's the hard part. That's the bitter pill to swallow. I talked to one of our commissioners about this, and she was telling me about a Form 5 and all of this stuff that happens that allows a police officer to leave one police force, go to another, even though the police force that he is being sent from knows that he is a problem and doesn't follow the rules of engagement. He's hired someplace else. And the police officer who killed Tamir Rice, which was the little 12-year-old boy that they said looked like a full-grown man in Cleveland, had been dismissed from the police force. And now he was there. And they didn't even take a minute before they shot him, with him sitting out there with a toy, a BB gun. So you see that we have this problem in this country with structural racism that allows people to believe that if you are of a certain race, I can believe things about you that are not true. I can do things to you and get away with them. And it rarely goes beyond the local news, because most of those names up there, you didn't recognize them. I didn't recognize them. They were things that happened in local communities, and that year, 30-some victims were shot and killed by the police with no weapons, and that's what they would typically find. We remember seeing the one on TV in Georgia, where the police officer shot him in the back and walked over and dropped the gun next to him so that he could say he was in fear for his life. Listen to how many times that you will hear that. I was afraid for my life. If you are that afraid for your life, then maybe you should not be a police officer because you have a dangerous job. A man was asleep in the drive-thru at a fast food restaurant. So naturally, he's obstructing traffic for the drive-thru. So they call the police. The police came. They found him asleep in his car, and they shot him. He's dead. And why is it that you have to shoot so many times? You will see that it's 30, 40. They'll empty a clip if there's an incident. It doesn't take all that. You do not find that that's the same treatment that whites will receive when they're called to the scene. So we see that the next slide. That when you have all of these shots, it's excessive force, and it's Laquan McDonald is the name you might recall. He was the young man in Chicago, had been misbehaving, shouldn't have been doing what he was doing, but then he was running away from the police, and they shot him in the back. And they shot him until he was dead. It's like, I thought you wanted to just stop them, arrest them, and then don't be judge, jury, and executioner. But that far too often happens with, you can see the data. The data here shows that I should have put my glasses on. You get 15% of people who are stopped in any particular year by the police, and the challenges that they go through. 250,000. I'm gonna have to go back here and read this. Oh, that's the number of injuries. The number of injuries that you get from those 15% that are stopped each year. Now that number includes black and white. But the problem that I have with all of this is that there's little to no accountability. You have all those stops, you have all those arrests. You have lots of good police officers. I grew up with some wonderful police that looked out for me. And when I was doing what I wasn't supposed to be doing, was riding my bicycle across the street and got hit by a car, they came and took me home and pleaded with my grandmother not to spank me because I was out doing what she told me not to do. And they were trying to save me, and I was like, I will forever be grateful to the police because she doesn't play. But we find that sometimes these police officers are repeat offenders. And NPR, National Public Radio, they did a study, and they found that the shooting of unarmed blacks had a very troubling pattern. The pattern of the police officers toward the citizens led them to believe that they were free to take similar actions, let citizens believe that they could take similar actions. If you remember Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin had gone to, he was a kid. He went to the store to get some Skittles. and was coming home, and the neighborhood vigilante, who was looking out for the neighborhood, and he had an encounter, and it turned out that they said that the sidewalk was a weapon. And Trayvon Martin is dead today. You know, when police get away with things, they become examples in the community, and others think that they can do the same thing. The same was true with Ahmaud Arbery. You know, you got two guys, a father and a son, and then a third guy who's going to film the whole thing. Now, why do you want to film something like this? Making it unsafe for children to go to the store and buy candy, to go jogging and not lose their life. There is a high cost to this police misconduct. You know, they do it, we know that they do it, we see that they do it, but I don't think we think about how much we spend of taxpayer dollars. The high cost of police misconduct occurring in 7 categories. The first one is wrongful death. 2nd, excessive force. 3, false arrest. 4, illegal detention. Illegal search and seizure. 6, violation of a person's civil rights. 7, and property damage. And it's only been recently that police are being held accountable for the things that they have done that are wrong. The police officer who said she thought she was in Dallas, who said she thought she was in her own apartment, and the individual was eating a bowl of ice cream. Now, I know when I'm in my house, it doesn't look like anybody else's. Now, how can you be in the same apartment complex, go in somebody else's house, think that they're a burglar in your house, and you kill them? She was held accountable. These categories come from the Police Brutality Center, and they were, as of 12,006, they reported that 7,600 officers nationwide have suits that have been settled costing over $3.2 billion in the past 10 years. The 25 largest law enforcement offices had over 40,000 misconduct claims paid out to resolve complaints of wrongdoing. The loss of life, psychological damage to the families, communities, along with the devaluation of property, are tremendous with long-term impacts. This contributes to the wealth gap and the health issues in the Black community. Let me just give you some quick highlights, because many times research is done, but there are not Black people in the research studies. So you don't know if the results of that research will work on them or not. Why do they not sign up? Why do we not sign up for those studies? There's just 2 little quick cases I'll give you. One is called the Tuskegee experiment. That was supposed to last for 6 months. It was a study on syphilis. There were 600 people. 201 were the control group. The other 399 was a group that had syphilis. There was no cure when they started the study. They came up with a cure in the length of time that the study ran. They did not give it to those individuals. They wanted to see what was the natural course of what would happen. Many of those men died because they would not give them medication. What year was that? No, it was in the 40s. Mm-hmm. It was in the 40s. And I can give you the exact dates. It was 1932 to 1972 were the actual dates. There was another study which makes black people really question whether or not they can trust people who are supposed to be looking out for their health care. There was a woman, Henrietta Lotz, and she had cancer, but her cancer cells wouldn't die, which gave them an opportunity to figure out and do experiments. But they never asked her permission to use her cells. And this was done by Johns Hopkins. And so, you know, you say, well, why don't people sign up for studies? It's like, because they know about these. When COVID was raging, some black people said, I'm not going to get that shot. I don't trust it. And so you find that in your communities, you have to have this awareness in your background to say it's not going to be like that. In fact, it was one of the companies, she helped discover the cure. They found the cure in 43. That's why you remember the 40s. So, you know, and her cells today are still being used. They were used to help find the cure for polio. And they used her cells in the research on COVID. They're called HeLa, to protect her privacy, because her first name was Henrietta and her last name was Lotz, L-A-U-C-K. So you can see that there are all these things that have gone on and are going on that impact us, because if they impact black people, they also impact white people, because we live together. And if my neighborhood goes down and you living in my neighborhood, guess what? Your property goes down too. So what we want to be aware of and sensitive to is the things that we have to do, we need to do, to show that the love of God is in each of us and that we will support one another and that we will move closer toward the peace that Martin Luther King talked about, the righteousness that John talks about in the Bible of what we should and should not do. You know, I could give you another whole talk, but I'm wrapping it up, because otherwise Lou will come up here and pull my sweater. But I want to close with this because it was meaningful to me. Aside from, because I got statistics up the yang, and we don't want to just give you numbers and overwhelm you with numbers. But you all know this too. It's by Emma Lazarus. Does that name ring a bell for anyone? Emma Lazarus wrote the sonnet called New Colossus, and we all know it, which was the American promise. And when I get to the part that you're most familiar with, you're gonna say, oh yeah. And I quote, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from the land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. I think about with the immigrant issues that we have today. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, your stories, pumped, cries she with silent lips. Now here's the part that you guys know. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That's what we've wanted for centuries. That's what we still want. Now, as an African American, I didn't come through Ellis Island, but that's still what we want today. We want the opportunity that America represents and the freedom. So let us continue to work, increase our knowledge about loving one another, because that was the last commandment that Jesus gave. He said, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. And with love, I close.
Thank you, Paula. You will see around the sides of the room here, there are posters, pictures, some are pictures, some are information. Paula encouraged us today to increase our awareness around racial justice and equity issues. And that's what we're about, trying to increase our awareness. And she used the term, structural racism, sometimes it's called systemic racism. It's not the meanness, it's not the individual biases and prejudice sometimes that we are working against. It's the structures that are in society that most of us who are white just don't see. So we want to invite you after the service, when you do some fellowship time, get some coffee, come back and read through these and see if you can determine which of these are really structural and systemic racism that still lives among us. We thank Paula. You'll have a chance to thank her at the end of the service.
We take an offering each week to sustain this space that we call home and to support the work of our fellowship. If this is your first time here, please feel free to let the plate pass you by. Your presence this morning is a wonderful gift itself, and thank you for coming. And if you filled out a visitor card, you can put it in the plate. The offertory music for this Sunday is entitled, Lift Every Voice and Sing, often referred to as the African American Anthem. Words written by James Weldon Johnson, and music was composed by his brother, J. Rosamond Johnson. The offering will now be gratefully received, and we thank you. One way we show gratitude and express our connection as a congregation is through singing. So let us join together and sing hymn 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation, from the Gray Hymnal. Once again, the lyrics will be projected. Please rise if you're able.
Based on a hymn, Let Freedom Span Both East and West, words by Jacob Trapp. We close with this. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship, human worth, our common faith and deed. Then East and West will meet and share, and South shall build with North, one human commonwealth of gold throughout the whole wide earth. Thank you. I want to repeat the announcements. We thank Dr. Dawning and Gene Olson for being part of our service today here at San Gabriel. We hope to see you soon, but not tomorrow at the MLK March. I'm improvising now. After the service next Sunday on January 21st, Karina will provide a lay leader training session for the social justice team and any others who would like to be part of our Sunday services. If you have an interest in going with San Gabriel to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Houston later this month, be sure to contact Lou Sneed or Michelle Augustine. And information about that is also in the messenger. Michelle has an announcement about PIT.
I'll be quick. I know we're all ready for our snack. Good morning. So January is the annual point-in-time count of those who are sleeping unsheltered or in their cars, and that's coming up at the end of the month. And I mentioned to somebody that it would be really helpful to have hats and gloves to pass out when we're counting. And this wonderful sponge bag Bob appeared today. Thank you, Miss Carolyn. And so if you have any extra hats or gloves that we can take to the homeless, that would be helpful. And I want to say a word of thanks to those who worked hard this past 2 weeks. We have established a site to use as a freeze night shelter. Tonight is our first night, our beta test night. We're going to open it tonight and tomorrow night. So say some prayers, send us some positive thoughts that we can give those who are living unsheltered as our neighbors some hope and care and some love. And I'm sure to send it from St. Gabriel. Thank you all.